Justice seems like such a simple thing on the surface. Everybody wants justice. Everybody can agree justice is a good thing. But when we get down to the details in each specific setting or circumstance or situation of what is the just thing to do, it gets a lot more difficult and complicated. If justice is giving each their due, we forget the each. When we seek justice on behalf of a crime being committed, what is just for the criminal? What is just for those who are harmed? What is just for the society as a whole? And if we step back a little, maybe we get a better perspective on crime and punishment and proportionality and mercy and compassion as part of justice. The second reading we had this morning was from The New Jim Crow, which was the Unitarian Universalist Association's Congregational Read, the book they asked everyone to read and study a couple years ago. And the thesis is very compelling, as you heard this morning, that mass incarceration of people of color is what has replaced Jim Crow as a means of social control. There are more people in prison today for drug-related offenses than were in prison as a whole entirety in 1980. And yet drug use has not steadily climbed. It's gone up and down and had peaks. And that prison population is disproportionately, in great numbers, people of color. Why is this? What's been happening? And have we missed something? The work Andrea James does ties into all of this in very specific ways, working with formerly incarcerated women. And she's here to tell us a little bit about her work and how it fits in this morning. Again, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Morning.
Morning.
And thank you again. Thank you, Reverend, for the invitation to come here today on this beautiful, beautiful sunny morning. Wasn't sure how we were going to make out last night, but we made it through. And thank you. Very, very happy to be here. I want to talk just a little bit about what we are trying to communicate to communities outside of our own by raising the issue of our connectedness. And I do this about 200 days out of the year on the road. I've been around this country in 3 times in just as many years, and understanding how connected we all are, regardless of where we live, is very important for us as people, as human beings, to begin to move forward, particularly in the climate of things throughout the world right now. Fundamentally, we are all human beings with life experiences. If you've been a human being with in addition to all of your other life experiences, you've been a human being that had the experience of incarceration, you know what works and what doesn't work, whether you can get those things to work for you or not. If you had the experience of incarceration, you know why we need to create a new system from a starting place of human rights rooted in consciousness. You would also know from being in a prison that sometimes you encounter a former judge, a former police officer, former legislators, doctors, former lawyers like I was, that those labels don't automatically qualify them as human beings that have evolved to a level of consciousness that qualifies them as the complete and total experts for creating a system from the foundation of human rights and rooted in spiritual consciousness. And if you've ever been incarcerated with any of the people we take for granted are criminal justice experts, it paints a clear picture that notwithstanding the letters behind our name or the culmination of accomplishments, we are all still fundamentally entities of energy experiencing life as human beings. And regardless of those labels, we are all in different places when it comes to consciousness. There are missing seats at the effective policy-making table, and there is much more to being an expert and understanding what is needed to restructure our broken system. To simply believe and construct a system with people at the table creating policy who are there only due to inadequate qualifications of expertise, we continue to sustain ineffective criminal justice policy and wonder why we hold in place an almost 60% recidivism rate here in Massachusetts. And most disturbing is that notwithstanding the Council of Governments research team encouragement for Mass legislators to not use their research as a reason to stop moving forward criminal justice reform, our legislative leaders have used the research project of the Council of State Governments to essentially put on hold voting on viable reform legislation positioned right now in the Commonwealth to create a shift toward a more effective criminal justice system in Massachusetts. And still, those of us fighting every day, not for justice reinvestment, but for an investment to be made in justice for our communities, we still hear my constituents aren't concerned about this. We've got a real problem here in Massachusetts, and there are missing seats at the solution table. For instance, we know that it's not just about incarceration. It's about the carceral state, the use of laws to social control certain populations, and using a false war on drugs to position legislation that no longer is overtly racist, but disguised for decades as public safety, with law enforcement given the task and money to implement those public safety strategies in specifically targeted communities. We often hear that there are dangerous people we need to be protected from. We are reminded at every opportunity by law enforcement, prison officials, and many legislators that in Massachusetts, the majority of people in prison here are there for violent offenses. By the way, that is not the statistics for incarcerated women in this state. So let us begin by conceding that there exist dangerous people that none of us would want anyone to be victims of. Notwithstanding, we must continue to hold the space for us to recognize that even in cases of violent crime, people can redeem themselves and go on to lead productive lives. So let's just put that on the shelf for now. I'm not dismissing it because no one knows more than we do how important it is to stop the inaccurate defining of criminal justice reform based on violent and nonviolent categories. It just impedes our ability to begin effective dialogue about reform. But for now, let's start down our road for purposes of our time together, just focusing for now on people convicted of nonviolent crimes. If that's what it's going to take to get us movement, then let's go. I'm a quantum physics fanatic. I'm fascinated with technology and science that demonstrates our energy connectivity. The technology that now can measure the energy frequencies that we are made of and that surrounds our bodies. The science that now confirms that the empty space around us is anything but empty, and that there exists in the universe a zero-point field that we are all connected to and impact with our thoughts and emotions. I'm fascinated with quantum physics and the proof it provides that demonstrates what you do unto others, you do unto me, literally. To truly reach a place of society of public safety, we must be conscious of and speak the language of this connectivity. Mostly, all people, whether they carry a PhD, a JD, a regular Joe, or a prison number behind their name, are imprisoned by their thoughts, emotions, fears, egos, whether they ever become incarcerated in an actual prison. Where do we get the ideas that shape our daily lives? How do we make a living? How do we come to accept a job or career that doesn't fulfill our passion? What shapes our decisions about people? Who deserves food, water, and shelter? Who deserves a good education, sustainable, dignified employment, and health care? And who deserves a quality life? Who's worthy of being at the table when it comes to making the rules? Who should decide who should be sent to live in a cage? And how do we determine that that will make things better and everybody outside safer? What are the life experiences and belief systems of the people making those decisions? How are their underlying beliefs affecting how they assign meaning to things? How are they interpreting things? We have to develop a system that acknowledges those emotions that shape most of our beliefs. And when we take into consideration that most people, regardless of their academic and career accomplishments, are walking around unaware of us as anything other than our physical appearance, we have to acknowledge that the systems designed to manage us are flawed, as they are based on flawed belief systems. So if our goal is public safety, why wouldn't we create a system that utilizes the proven paths to our wholeness and ultimately our collective healing? The beauty of creating this new system is that it will bring us all to a more conscious, more aware space and strengthen the well-being of us all. This isn't a criminal justice issue. This is a human issue. This is about humanity and our evolution. If we know we have created legislation and criminal justice policy that continues to result in permanent underclasses of human beings and disparate, racist, harmful outcomes, it's wrong, and it needs to be overhauled. It's about creating a system that starts from the concept of our connectivity and from seeking to expand our capacity for higher levels of consciousness. Because what we know is that this field of energy exists, and you and I are connected by this field of energy. And that's what it means when we hear that we are all connected. Quantum physics has proven that everything is made of atoms, and these atoms are made of waves of connected energy, and that our emotions, our beliefs, have a direct effect on what happens in our environment and in our physical world. We are co-creators of our world based on our emotions and our beliefs. As we think and feel, we co-create our world. And guess what? Those thoughts and beliefs we have allowed to go unchallenged about those other people, the people we have allowed to be targeted and incarcerated, the people whose struggles with addiction and poverty we have ignored, that belief system that it's okay because it doesn't concern me, well, now it does. Ruth Denison, a legendary Buddhist teacher, referred to this as a collective karma, where because people are members of a society, they must share in experiencing the consequences. So now that people of value from the valued communities are dying from drug overdoses at an alarming rate due to our fate of collective karma, we now finally are calling addiction a public health issue in Massachusetts. Now that the people who are valued in society are affected, we are scrambling to remove the labels, those labels that call people junkies and crack whores, and exploring places other than prisons to put them in. But not before we are all now being exposed to the pain so long felt by those ignored and undervalued. Our collective karma is now weighing heavily upon us all. Our collective well-being as human beings is directly affected by what energy is mass-produced among us. The practice of ignoring and sustaining decades of targeting for incarceration poor people of color is now at the doorstep of us all. Our complicity for the slow social and emotional deaths of entire communities we ignored and disenfranchised with lies of a war on drugs that we now want to pretend has nothing to do with the causes of crime today has come to bear on us all. From 1996 to 2008, we built a prison every 10 days in this country, and we targeted poor communities of color to fill those prisons. How dare we allow our legislators to start conversations about criminal justice reform from a place of fear politics with statements about the majority of incarcerated people in Massachusetts are there for violent offenses. The majority of people incarcerated in prisons in Massachusetts are there due to decades of policies that targeted and cycled them into an unforgiving, relentless carceral state, resulting in hurt people who hurt people. So our job as constituents is to expect our representatives to also be seekers of a new system and expect them to recognize that there are issues that need to be addressed and supported on behalf of our collective good and collective healing as human beings. Our job as constituents is to ensure our legislators know that as their constituents, we are concerned about this. As constituents, we need to be hyper-vigilant for our collective well-being of whether our representatives speak this language or are they stuck in a belief system rooted in fear, blame, judgment, and racism. Are they open to learning about the new technology, science, and research that focuses on healing and not creating more harm? Are they compassionate toward other people? Are they consciously and emotionally intelligent and experienced? Do they understand truly, do unto others as you would have them do unto you? What if instead of the war on drugs, we instead had declared a pursuit of early education, a pursuit of educational excellence in our schools, and access to higher education? What if we had invested in affordable housing and treatment on demand for the illness of addiction, and access to healthy food and parks, green spaces, and playgrounds? Instead of building a prison every 10 days and spending in excess of $1 million a year to cycle residents of single city blocks in and out of the justice system and those prisons, what if we would have invested in infrastructure projects and invested in technology and green jobs to save our beautiful, precious planet? In the words of President Obama this week in his last State of the Union address, he said, to have a better country, we have to not just have better legislators, or a better Congress, or a better president. But we must change the system, and it takes us, the people, to do that. He went on to say that we must remember that each of us is here because someone, somewhere, and at some time stood up for us. So in memory of Dr. King, I challenge us all. Right now in Massachusetts, we need a better, fairer, more just criminal justice system. One based on a framework of human dignity and human rights. One that recognizes the expertise of those most impacted by the mistakes of our current system and includes those voices in making it better. In honor of Dr. King, I ask that we stand collectively to move forward to reach that goal. Thank you.